Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for finding us on YouTube or Bitchute or my iTunes podcast network. If that's where you're finding us, we appreciate you tuning in. I have back on the line Bob Kudla, the founder of Trade Genius. How are you, Bob?
I'm good, Sean. How you doing?
Well, I'm good, and I want to thank you for being a sponsor of SGT Report for quite some time over at the website, sgtreport.com, and I do subscribe to Trade Genius. I use the service. It works great, and I get people asking me all the time, what's your experience been? And it's been a great experience for me. Do you want to just tell people a little bit about Trade Genius before we begin here today?
Yeah, sure. We have a system called the Profit Ribbon System. And, it's designed to get you into trades at the right price, get you out of the trade at a profit. And, we've developed what we think is the premier stock trading system for regular traders. And what we've done over the years is we've really developed something we think is pretty wonderful. Even if you're a day trader or a swing trader or you like to trade cryptocurrencies, we have the system works for you. We'll train you and we'll get you to trade signals, and we'll get you in a chat room that works really good. Even if you don't know how to trade, or if you're an experienced trader, I think you'll really like it. And then we put together a bunch of specials, Sean, like we always do for Saturday night midnight. I know you always put the links in below, but go to tradelikeagenius.com. They're significantly discounted for your listeners like we always do. And I think you'll get a good return on your investment by trading with us. So thanks for letting me share that.
Yeah, all right, absolutely. And guys, if you want to learn more, the link is below. And Bob, I wanted to ask you too, just before we get started with a zero hedge roundup, what do you make of the action in Bitcoin since the halving? What's your outlook for Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, it's positive. Since the halving, typically there's a 3 to 6 month period where you're going to get this digestion, and then then you're going to get a significant move probably into the end of 2020 into 2021. But what Bitcoin's been doing is that it's been kind of tracking the market. And so as the market's been moving higher, it's actually been leading it. So I think the more the Fed shoves money into the system and the banking systems are going negative, interest rates around the world, people are going to look for non-banking assets to trade. And Bitcoin's really the only game in town. And then obviously gold, silver, and the miners is where you're going to want to hang out if you're kind of stuck inside the banking system.
Yeah, and I wanted to start with Bitcoin because the next logical question is about gold and silver. And I was looking last night, Bob. I'm not sure if you've been following this, but it's extraordinary to see over at APMEX, Silver Eagles, $8.99 over spot. $8.99 over spot, Bob. And if you want to get a kilo bar of silver, like a Pamp Swiss bar, like the one I keep on my desk to remind me what real money is, $5 or $6 over spot. These used to be $1 over spot, Bob. So I think what we're seeing is a separation now between the paper price and the real world price, the COMEX phony money price and the real world price. What's your outlook for silver and gold this year and next?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think, and I've said this to you before, I think silver is going to crack 20 before the end of the year for sure, and gold is going to go to all-time highs, and then from there, I'm looking at $2,500 for gold. It's just been a little train that could. You get these little downdrafts here and there as the bankers try to slow the climb, but it's inexorable, and the more money they're shoving into the system, and the more these emerging markets are starting to fail, the higher gold's going to go. Look, the only market where gold is not at all-time highs is the U.S. dollar, because the dollar and gold are going to be the last two reserve currencies, if you will. And so you're going to see them start climbing together, which they have been doing, and then gold will leave the dollar behind at some point. But yeah, so, silver at some point, when you talked about your spread there, is platinum and palladium started to do that last year. And then one day we woke up and palladium and platinum are up 50%. And I think that's what's going to happen with silver and gold. The banking system is going to go bust at these bullion banks, and they're going to have to scramble for physical. And there's going to be a shortage. And it's going to take a lot higher prices for them to find, the physical silver and physical gold to meet their obligations. So you don't get too far away from this trade. Don't listen to anybody that says to short this thing unless you're day trading it or you're trading it over a couple days. You're going to always be looking to get long miners if you can.
Well, and that begs the question, how do you even short a market where the Fed is buying everything? The Fed's balance sheet has topped $7 trillion, shows increased buying of corporate bond ETFs. I mean, I sound like a broken record, Bob, but what incredible madness. I mean, it just defies belief at this point, doesn't it?
Yeah, so here's the method to their madness. So let's just suspend our moral indignation on this for a second and put ourselves in their shoes. Look, they're trying to prevent two things from happening, assuming that they're not purely evil, is that they're trying to keep the pension funds from imploding, which would then implode the entire system, number one. And number two is they're trying to give runway and also to keep the dollar from moving up too high. People don't realize that over 79% of all the loans in the world are denominated in dollars. So as the dollar keeps getting stronger and stronger, it starts to blow up around the world. And so the Fed is trying to stop that brush fire from happening. Now, what happens with that is that in their mind, the elites get a good guy here. They get to buy up all the assets using the taxpayers' wealth. And so eventually what's going to happen, and you and I talked about this before, is that the Fed / the bankers / the elites are going to own every asset in the country, and then they get to do their old social experiments. That's the thing that scares me more than anything, is that once they own everything, they can just whisper to these CEOs, hey, you know what? We'll sell your stock if you're not on board with this social initiative that's being floated out there, i.e., wearing certain wear to prevent the disease we can't discuss, and so on and so forth. And that's what's going to eventually happen. Japan's already there. Their entire bond market is owned by the Japanese central bank, i.e. Japan Inc. And the U.S. is going to get there. That's 7 trillion, Sean's going to 10 trillion. Then it's going to 12 trillion. So, there's not much we can do about it other than react and to protect our investments the best we can. But yeah, they're running a tightrope here, because if they screw up the other way, we go into a deflationary collapse.
Well, again, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, and there's many examples of that, not the least of which is I just read an article that the elite were getting out of Hertz before the bankruptcy and getting the retail investors into Hertz. So guess who takes the hit? Guess who loses all their money? The little guy, once again. And it occurred to me the other day, Bob, 0% interest rates really across the board for these big international banks. They get the money for free, and then they loan it back to us if we want to refinance our mortgages at 3.9%. So it's not zero interest rates for we the people. I did a screen share here. Morgan Stanley explains the one thing that has kept Treasury rates low. They say, what's kept the yields low? Fed purchases of treasuries year to date, and expectations for further Fed purchases played a critical role. That's Morgan Stanley. Feel free to jump in on any of these.
Yeah, well, I want to talk about the Hertz thing, because it's even worse than you say. I saw that thing where the Robinhood traders were buying Hertz, trying to day trade it, but they actually, the bondholders, probably the BlackRocks of the world or whatever, they offloaded their bonds to the Fed. So not only is retail getting hammered on the equity side, we, the taxpayer, the proud owners of worthless bonds by Hertz and Dollar Rent-A-Car, and that's the part that really frosts me, is that these big hedge funds now can offload their bond portfolios, into these ETFs that the Fed's are gonna buy up, and then they get to walk away scot-free. And the whole time before that, they were getting these huge, juicy, interest rate, positions by these junk bonds, and then they get to bail out at par and let us deal with the mess. That's the thing that people don't get, and they're not going to see it because the Fed's just going to hide these bonds in their portfolio for decades.
I was watching a video earlier today. I shared it over at thephaser.com. It was with Vincent over there at Red Elephants. And he's making the same points I've been making, which is this lockdown is insanity. Walmart is open, Target is open, they're thriving while the little man and the little business gets decimated. And he had some numbers, and I think he said Target's online sales during this pandemic are up over 140%. Walmart's online sales are up something like 45%. You know what's going on over there at Amazon. The net worth of all these elites has gone up. And meanwhile, small businesses are being gutted. So I just share that, Bob, because I think we're all getting real fed up with this stuff. Back to zero hedge. JP Morgan's Diamond admits Fed liquidity is propping up stocks. Kudla calls for back-to-work bonus as Americans prefer sitting on couch rather than working. That's an important one, Bob. People have been getting these checks, and in many cases, these checks they've been getting exceed the wages they were being paid at restaurants and bars and barbershops and in retail outlets. So they don't want to go back to work. And that is the ultimate moral hazard with giving people money for nothing, isn't it, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, it is. And, I have a daughter that's working while she's in college, and she got laid off. And we were astounded by, and she wasn't a minimum wage worker either. She was close to, $17 an hour. And she was still way outpacing it for her, where she worked. And they're not going to open up until July. So she's going to end up getting the full thing. And the only good thing about this, though, is I think it all ends in July, and that's why the states are all opening up now. I think the reason why we saw all these red states, and cities not opening up is because most of their constituents were making more money not working than working. So we know who's more important to them, small businesses or their voters, is that now they know when July comes, because McConnell said, look, I'm not extending it. And then in July, these people will have nothing. So the cities now are rapidly, look at California, did a 180, no churches, not churches, no retail, not retail, no restaurant and bars. We have restaurants and bars open here now too. So I think, money talks on this stuff. And I think that was the game that one of the things that slipped through with Pelosi is to pay this outrageously high federal, bump for these people. And, knowing that is going to cause this strife. But I just hope they don't do it a second time. I hope it's more targeted for the businesses that truly got hurt.
Well, let's talk about the election in November. Isn't it funny? Where is Biden? Where is Biden? Do you remember the Me Too movement, Bob? Remember what they did to Kavanaugh? Look at this headline. Representative Omar declares that she believes Biden is a rapist but should be the next president. So she says she believes Reid, his accuser, and it doesn't matter. See, the Democrats have a double standard for everything, Bob. That goes for free speech, that goes for borders, that goes for voting, that goes for mistreating women. It's always a double standard with these devious Democrats, isn't it? And I think people are starting to see it. I think that people like that tyrant in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, and the tyrant in Illinois, Pritzker, and the tyrant maybe even in New York, Cuomo, these people may find themselves booted out next time there's an election.
Yeah, I think so. I think they lost the independent voter. And the other thing was interesting too. Somebody said, look, they thought they were wrapping up the younger generation, but these kids are livid, that they can't live their life. And they don't understand it, and I hear it because I have kids this age, and it's like, hey, why can't the old people just die? Is their attitude on this thing is why is this affecting me? Now, I'm not making a moral judgment. I'm just talking what is. And why can't I go to the beach? Why can't I see my friends? Why can't I go to college? Versus this is the disease. The one thing my daughter said, which was amazing, this is a disease that I don't know anybody that has it. So that should be pretty telling. And I think they're getting that polling data now. And I think Whitmer she's dead meat. Pritzker just said the other day, don't you worry about what the courts have to say. I'm the word in Illinois. That's all you need to know about that guy.
Yeah, that is. He's mafia, man. Honestly, people that behave like that need to be impeached, recalled. I don't know. These people are really, really pushing their luck with the people because I can't believe that people in Illinois would stand for this. I like what happened over there in Wisconsin. People got ticked off enough that they went to the Supreme Court and the state said, nope, you do not have the authority, Governor. And everything went back open the next day. Restaurants open, everything's open. And the governor actually said, the Wisconsin governor said, when asked by local media, what's your plan? What do you do next? What's your plan? He said, I don't have anything. I don't have another card to play. That's it. I don't have any power here. at least that guy has enough integrity to understand how the Constitution works, at least in the case of the Wisconsin State Supreme Court. In Illinois, in Minnesota, in New York, I wonder how come there hasn't been cases taken to the Supreme Courts in those states yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's interesting. And if I go back to Pritzker for a second, you got to remember the Pritzker family is the one that bankrolled Obama. So people don't realize that. It wasn't this guy, but I think it was his mother. And that bankrolled Obama to get him into politics and get a national spotlight. So this family is absolutely, communist liberal elite and very dangerous. I pray that Illinois goes before all the other states do, so we can all get an object lesson in what happens when a state implodes. So California, believe it or not, has been threading this needle as effectively as a liberal elite could. He had a couple stumbles where the people came pouring out in the streets, but I just think that he sees the writing on the wall. This past weekend, everything was shut down here. Everybody went to Arizona, and I think these people are saying, hey, we're going to run out of tax money here pretty soon. And I don't think there's ever going to be a second shutdown. I think people will come out of the woodwork.
Yeah, and I should have included Gavin Newsom in my rant there because he's a globalist tyrant as well. One more screen share, one more topic here to discuss. Did you happen to see, well, let me read the headline first. Futures soar above $3,000 tumbles. Here's the key. On vaccine hopes, reopening optimism. Vaccine hopes. Boy, I don't know what's going on over at Zero Hedge, but they really ought to write some of their headlines more carefully because most of us in this country are not banking on a vaccine to save us. We don't want the Bill Gates vaccine. We will not take a mandatory vaccine. And did you happen to see Alan Dershowitz on the Jason Goodman show saying Americans have no constitutional right to refuse a mandatory vaccine for coronavirus if and when it's rolled out?
Yeah, so I saw that, and just the Zero Hedge article, they were just actually retyping what the was being pushed as the reason why futures were going higher, and yeah, we saw that too. And the market has it's been struggling all day today. It's hitting rarefied air. I don't tell you about vaccines, but the dirty little secret about vaccinating a coronavirus is that it's like shooting fruit flies with a 50 caliber bullet. You can't keep that virus still, even if you're pro vaccine. You can't even keep that virus still enough to make it effective. In 2017 and 2018, they rolled the vaccine out. It killed more people than this coronavirus did today, and the vaccine was like 30% effective. They can't even get enough people to develop antibodies from it. Every time they tout a vaccine, the bigger test is a failure. So coronavirus vaccinations are absolutely worthless, and that's what they were hanging over people's heads. We're not going to open up till we have a vaccine, and I think people are pointing out then you're going to wait till hell freezes over because there's not going to be one. And even if you want there to be one, there's not going to be one. Flu vaccines are not and never been effective enough for people.
Well, that's right. And they also can damage people because of the ingredients, aluminum, and so many other dangerous ingredients in there. One more screen share here because I think this all ties together quite nicely. People are waking up in droves. My wife is so concerned now, and her eyes are open to so many things that, she was on the fringes about a lot of this stuff for a long time, but this lockdown, the shutdown of the economy, and now the rollout of the Real ID Act, Real ID 2020, has got her tripping out. And we had a conversation last night. We actually got to go out for dinner because restaurants had opened back up in our area, thank God. And we were having a conversation about her trying to get ready for this Real ID 2020 and get the paperwork in order, and it's been an absolute nightmare. They make you jump through so many hoops. You even need to dig up your marriage certificate as part of this. And I said to her, how many people in this country are going to be equipped and organized enough like you are to do all this stuff? Number one. Number two, be willing to do it. And number three, go stand in a DMV line for 3 or 4 hours to have it done at all. Meanwhile, governments around the world are urging their unemployed to become social distancing snitches. They want to employ people as these contact tracers. And that led my wife and I into the conversation about Bill Gates and the mandatory vaccine, which could contain nano-tracking devices and God knows what, Bob. So I think this is, and people are starting to see it, as an absolute slippery slope into despotism if we are allowed for this stuff to stand. And I think people are waking up to the globalist agenda behind all of this, and at the end of the day, that is the good news, Bob. I think it's waking up a lot of people.
Yeah, I said the same thing. They overplayed their hand once again. I think they thought that this virus was going to be a lot more deadly and debilitating than it turned out to be. And so this whole contact tracing thing is you're going to see contact tracers probably getting beat up and killed in the streets, and they're going to show up at the wrong houses at the wrong time. And I mean, they're setting themselves up for failure. And then there's no way we're going to allow a shock troop of government employees to be just walking around, trying to take your children away from you. And I just don't think the independents are gonna buy it. There's a lot of people that I know that don't lean right. That in California we have you lean right, you lean left, and you lean don't bother me. And a lot of the don't bother me people now have been forced into the camp of I better lean right because leaning don't bother me is putting me in the left. And they're forcing me now to care. And I think that's not what they wanted. I think they thought they were going to come out of this as a savior and this is the next step. And it's turning out just like climate change, an overarching bungle of data that's not true, and then trying to control every aspect of your life. But I agree with you. The contact tracing, the real ID, the snitching, the phone tracing. You saw in Hawaii, they fined a couple people $5,000 because they left their hotel early. That stuff just frosts people.
What?
That's not considered free and fair way of treating people.
$5,000? No.
Yeah. Yeah. If you go to Hawaii, you have to agree to a 14-day quarantine. They track your phone and then they'll call you. But one guy was taking pictures. They got on Instagram and somebody snitched him, $5,000 fine. And this was a couple. They've already caught a couple people this way. So people are livid. I mean, Hawaii, if they don't stop their quarantine in the next 30 days, I'm sure you have listeners from there. You guys are going into, into some sort of abyss. I mean, you get all your income from the either Department of Defense or from tourists, and tourist money's going away. So, yeah, I just sit back and say, this is great. They screwed up. And this whole mail-in balloting thing, I know you didn't bring it up yet. Now you're seeing all these horror stories about these people getting their addresses getting 6 or 7 ballots to their homes because prior people moved and didn't leave forwarding addresses and all this kind of stuff. Ballots that were supposed to go to South Carolina ending up in Virginia. I just think that's going to blow up too. So if you want to vote, if you think Trump's going to be your person, then I think I'm more hopeful today than I was 3 months ago.
Yeah, me too. And one final word, I mentioned going out to dinner with my wife, and I mentioned the fact that I think people are waking up in droves. One tangible piece of evidence that that's true, and that people are getting the real information, Bob, from doctors that have blown the whistle on Dr. Fauci, from Dr. Judy Mikovits, who I just interviewed, from those 2 California doctors that said, look, staying indoors is less healthy. Wearing a mask is less healthy. Breathing in your own CO2, very dangerous. People are waking up in droves because when my wife and I went out for that dinner and we walked around down by the river where there's a lot of boats and there's a lot of people everywhere, we didn't see one person wearing a mask. And I think that's tangible evidence that people are waking up to the truth about this thing, because if people bought the official story, which YouTube only wants us discussing, anything other than what the WHO, World Health Organization, recommends gets deleted by YouTube. If people bought that official story, yes, they'd feel cooped up being at home and they'd want to go out and they'd want to go to restaurants, but they'd wear a mask. I didn't see anybody wearing a mask, Bob, and I frankly think that's good news.
Yeah, I mean, look, I live in South Orange County, and we're going to go visit family that lived up closer to Newport Beach. So it's about a 19-mile drive up the coast. We thought, Sunday night, let's just cruise up the coast. It took us almost 3 times as long because everybody and their brother was out. And that just, what I told my wife, I said, you can think of anything you want about this virus is people aren't buying it. Because if people are buying it, they'd be staying home. And I think people are voting with their feet. They're out at the parks, they're out at the beach, they're in their cars. A restaurant opens, it's packed. We opened a beach up before, 70,000 people showed up at a beach. I mean, you couldn't even not bump into people trying to get to the ocean. So everybody's saying, hey, you know what? I know you guys are yakking about this thing being the worst thing ever. We don't believe you.
Yep, and that is the good news. People, look, the other piece of good news is, and I share it time and time again, is that we have a Second Amendment. We're armed. And there was somebody recently, and I retweeted this, I think it was the Brazilian parliament, but one of these politicians ranting about how everybody needs to be armed because an armed population can never be made slaves. And he was making the comment, look how quickly we've fallen into tyranny and dictatorship on the back of this phony virus, on the back of this pandemic. Everyone needs to be armed. And guess what we just saw happen in Canada? The hand of the Queen, Justin Trudeau, he's trying to disarm Canadians. So therein lies the final message I want to share with people. Cherish and fight for your Second Amendment rights, folks. As long as we have those, they cannot make us slaves. They really can't, Bob.
Yeah, I mean, look, the First, Second, Fourth Amendment, those things, you should cherish those and fight for them every day.
Amen. All right. Lots of lessons have been learned on the back of this pandemic, and I'm grateful for them. It's been painful. It's been terrible. And we're being looted by the Fed. There's lots of bad news. But the good news is we've seen their playbook, and it doesn't work. It's not going to work. They're not going to make us slaves. Bob, thanks for your time. I really do appreciate it, and I'll leave the link to Trade Genius below for folks who want to check it out.
Yeah, and thank you, Sean. And I'll leave you with this. Things don't matter to people till they matter to people. And this overreach made everything matter to everybody. And now people are awake in ways they didn't want them to be.
Yeah, that's right. In ways the elite didn't want them to be. I think this has backfired in many ways. So we can be grateful for that. Guys, our guest has been Bob Kudla, the founder of Trade Genius. Thanks for your time, Bob.
Thank you.
All right, guys, thanks so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate you. A shout out to our patrons who are keeping us in the fight for truth and real news. And for real news, guys, please visit us directly at sgtreport.com, the antidote to corporate propaganda. God bless. Bye-bye.
Is every time there's a trade, say you go into your brokerage account and you buy 10 shares of Apple stock, the brokerage company theoretically is supposed to buy those shares, put them in your name, exchange the contracts, exchange ownership, and put the money in their account. And so you've got a clean transaction. And that's all done by the DTCC. Well, they're not doing that anymore, which is insane. So now basically the fox is guarding the hen house. The fox is the hen house.